I am here with Raymond R. Forget Jr. He was in the Air Force during the Vietnam era. Again, I just want to thank you for participating in this interview, and I want to thank you for your service to this country. So we're gonna start from the beginning. So where and when were you born?
I was born July 17, 1944 in Woonsocket Hospital.
What did your parents do for a living?
My mother works in the textile mills in Woonsocket. My father was a welder for Brogill Industries. I used to be on River Street in Woonsocket.
Did you have any siblings, and if so, how many did you have?
I have one brother, never went into service, and he doesn't do much because he doesn't talk to me, so it's very hard.
What were you doing before you entered the service?
I was at Mount St. Charles Academy. I graduated on June 4th, 1964. 2 weeks later, June 19th, I was in the Air Force. Flew 23 of us out of Providence, Rhode Island. We flew from here to Baltimore, Maryland. No, to Newark, New Jersey. There I met a staff sergeant, gave him all the records. There we met up with other recruits. We got on a plane and flew from there to Baltimore. All the recruits were in the second class, and first class was all civilians. They got off, and from there we flew to Lackland Air Force Base in Texas. Got there around 3 in the morning, 2:30 in the morning. It was a chartered flight. We were bused to the induction center. They filled out paperwork, contact people and all that. So by the time we got all that done, it was around 4:30, 5 o'clock. They marched us off to the barracks. They says, we'll let you sleep for 4 or 5 hours. 3 hours later, they woke us up, and we started training. I was at Lackland Air Force Base for 4 months, doing my basic training. Vietnam was declared a conflict on July 1st, 1964. So the war was picking up, so we were pushed through basic training. At the end of 4 weeks, with, I don't know, hundreds of recruits, we were shipped off to Chanute Air Force Base in Illinois. There I finished my basic training the last 2 weeks. There I had to wait. After 2 weeks, my basic training was completed. I had to wait for security clearance because I was entering a missile analyst mechanic school. So I had to wait for a secret clearance. So I waited another 4 weeks after my basic training. After 6 weeks, I was assigned to the 3348 School Squadron at the Chanute Air Force Base. There I went to basic electronics school for 18 weeks. Passed all of that. Then I came home for 12 days for the first time home. Then I went back, and then I went into what they call the sets, which I was supposed to be a mechanic on the Hound Dog missile, which is a missile that you probably never heard of or seen. It is a missile that was hung on the side of a B-52, and that was the start of the missile program that you have seen so far in the Afghan war and all that. But I mean, it was a very crude missile as compared to the missiles that were there today. Went all the way to the end of the class. Now here it is, almost a year after I've been in the Air Force, and the Air Force had a curve. I had a passing grade as far as my grade was going, but the curve put me out of the course, so they kicked me out. Went into the 3354th School Squadron, which was the aircraft electrician, 5133 course. There was another 18-week class. I aced the school in 9 weeks with honors. I had my orders to go when I graduated. On the day I graduated, it says you're one of only 3 people that has any electronic background. You are now going to become an instructor for the aircraft electrician course, doing the basic electronics, AC and DC power system, which was a 2-week block in block 2. So off I went, started teaching class, also attended school for 8 more weeks to become a certified instructor, and I am a certified instructor in the U.S. Air Force. Taught that for a year, basic electronics, AC, DC power systems. Then they transferred me to troubleshooting on the B-52, which was block 4. There were 6 blocks altogether in there. And there, after 6 months over there, they said, oh, we can't keep you here anymore. The Vietnam War is winding down, so we don't need you anymore. But as I was teaching school, I was teaching Vietnamese because Vietnamese had some of our planes and we were teaching them how to be aircraft electricians. They spoke French after the French occupation. I spoke French, so they all got good grades in my classes. So I have very good reviews from school as far as being an instructor over there. So then I got orders to go to Travis Air Force Base in California, which is halfway between San Francisco and Sacramento. There I worked for the Military Airlift Command, 60th MAW, MAW, and there we were taking care of planes. Now, when I first got there, we had C-123 providers, which were planes from the Korean War and Second World War, propellers. But they were replacing them with the brand new C-141s. I worked on the very first C-141s made, tail number 001, 0002. So it's quite of an honor. I also worked on B-52, KC-135, C-135s, C-130s, C-133s. Well, many people have never seen a C-133. What a C-133 is an oversized C-130 that was originally made for carrying Minuteman missiles to Minuteman silos. But because of Vietnam, they needed a larger cargo planes because the C-123 was small in comparison to the C-133. So we worked on those. They shipped off all the C-123s to Hickam Air Force Base in Hawaii, and we just kept on working. So I worked 3 months on a flight line. Then they said, well, you're the only certified instructor in the squadron, so you're going to become our OJT, on-the-job training instructor. So every newbie that was coming into the base that was an electrician, I had to make sure that he went to classes and made sure that he did all of his testing so that he could go from a 3 level to a 5 level, then he could be promoted after that. So that's basically what I did in the Air Force for 4 years. They wanted me to go to Vietnam, but I was already engaged and getting ready to get married, so I had no intentions of going to Vietnam because, you know, it wasn't a very pleasant place to be in the first place. Although the Air Force treats you quite well. I mean, the food is good, you have 3 square meals a day, you always had a nice place to sleep at night, it was nice and dry. It wasn't air conditioned, but it was dry. So it was good service. I had a good time in the Air Force. So.
Going back to the beginning, so why did you choose the Air Force at all?
I chose the Air Force because they had good opportunities for education, which was a very good thing because being an aircraft electrician, I was able to jump over and become a house electrician when I came out. So when I went and applied for my apprenticeship license, my 4 years in the Air Force counted as my apprenticeship program. Then I took the test, became a journeyman electrician in the state of Rhode Island. Then I took my test in Massachusetts. I'm a journeyman electrician in Massachusetts. And then eventually I went and take my test for my master's in Rhode Island. So I can basically do electrical work in Rhode Island and all of Massachusetts.
All right, so were you awarded any medals or citations?
I was, the things that I was awarded, I had sharpshooter. I had a presidential unit citation with a cluster, so that's twice we had that with that. Air defense medal, I have them all over here, I don't remember all of them. I mean, you know, this is 52 years ago. So it's kind of hard to remember everything. And air defense medal, and a couple of other ones I had. But other than that, not really, nothing. We had outstanding unit citation because Travis Air Force Base was the main debarkation point for all of the troops and all of the material going to Vietnam. So we were a very, 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 very busy base. I mean, we were operating 24/7. Some days we worked 2 weeks straight without a break because the planes kept coming in. One time we had to close down the active runway because we had too many things going on at one time, and they only could use one runway to land. So it was a drastic time. Every 3 days there would be a C-141 that comes from Vietnam, and you know those were the bad days because that was the day that they flew all of the bodies in from Vietnam. And whenever they shipped the bodies in from Vietnam, all they did is they took the body, slipped it into a body bag, closed it up, took the body bag and put it inside this aluminum coffin and just tied it up with straps. So they were not, there was you know, it was very, because it was hot over there, so the bodies were starting to decompose and all this and that. And then all the branches of the services, the Marines, the Navy, the Army, the Coast Guard, they would come and pick up their bodies and go. All the Air Force personnel were done at a mortuary right there at Travis Air Force Base. So I had my share of seeing deceased soldiers, and a couple of my friends came through at the same time when I was there. It's not a good thing to see.
Indeed. What kind of friendships and camaraderie did you form while serving and with him?
I have a couple of good friends out of that. One was a student that I had, Bob Mutu, M-U-T-U. He was an Air Force brat. His father was in the Air Force for 25 years. And he was one of my students while I was at Chanute Air Force Base, and when I went out to Travis, he was there. So we kind of like hung around when I was there. He's come over a couple of times to visit me. He lives in Colorado Springs, Colorado. He did 20 years in the Air Force, and then he worked as a civil service over there in the mountain in Colorado. And that's basically the only one that I really kept up with, you know.
How did you stay in touch with family and friends back home while you were at the base?
We used to write, and call once a month, because it was expensive in those days. We didn't have no cell phones in those days. You guys are lucky. We had no cell phones, you didn't have computers, we had nothing like that. So it had to be letters. So my fiance at the time used to send me letters almost every day, and I used to write to her. My parents would write to me once in a while. That was it. My brother never wrote to me, so. Strange, very strange.
What did you do for recreation while you were off duty?
Well, when I was off duty, I used to go to the USO when I was in Illinois. They had a USO right off the base over there, and they had all the girls from the colleges, the local by, Champaign-Urbana, and all the colleges, and they would have dances over there. I met a young lady out there. She lived in Springfield. I spent a couple of weekends with her in Springfield, Mass. Went and visited Lincoln's tomb. I visited Lincoln's house. That's like a park out there. Both sides of the street are shut off, and you're going to walk down there. Very, 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 very nice. Found Lincoln's tomb where his body was originally stolen, and then we went to the new monument where his body is encased in 50 tons of concrete, so they can't steal the body anymore. So that was very interesting to see. Went to Chicago a few times. In San Francisco, my friend Bob Mutu, his aunt was a maitre d' at the Drake. So we would go down there and spend the weekend, and she had this bed that was inside the wall. So we would pull that down, we'd sleep there, so it didn't cost us anything to sleep. And it cost us like $5 for a round-trip ticket on a Greyhound. So we spent the weekend in San Francisco. If you've never been to San Francisco, it is an absolutely beautiful city. We rode the cable car. At that time, it was only $1.50 to ride the cable car. Went a couple of years ago, it's now $5, so. Alcatraz was still, there was no prisoners on Alcatraz. Fisherman's Wharf was absolutely beautiful. But whenever you went to San Francisco, you had to make sure of one thing. You always had to have a jacket or a sweater for at night. Because I don't care if it's 80 or 90 in the daytime, at nighttime it goes down as low as 50 degrees at night, in the middle of July and August. But it's a beautiful city, very, very nice. So I did a couple of things like that. And then while I was at Travis, I was able to pick up my bus driving license, which usually people out of motor pool do not get that privilege of driving school buses. But I was able to get it because the chaplain's office needed somebody to drive buses on weekends for the CYO kids and that kind of stuff. So I have my license for a 32-pack and a license for a 48-pack, and I was the only non-transportation person to have a bus license for a 48-pack. So one of the weekends, I spent the whole weekend just bringing kids back and forth from Sacramento back to the base for a CYO. And then I would use it other times for different things around the chapel. Sometimes I would get a pickup truck, sometimes I would get a stake truck, and we would fix up. We had one chapel that was designated for the Catholics, and we would always do things like that. And this guy Mike, we used to do all kinds of good things over there at the chapel like that. So we had a good time. I had the licenses to do it, and it passed the time away. It was fun.
How were you received by your family and community after your service?
Not a problem. I came home from the service in June 19th, and I was afraid because I almost didn't make it home. Because my last flight, I had left on the 18th, but I didn't get to New York until the 19th. and then there was a small plane that was taking me from there to Providence, and all of a sudden we're taking off from New York Kennedy Airport, and they started having trouble with the plane, so we had to turn around, we had the fire trucks and everything else right there. I said, oh my God, all these 4 years in the Air Force and I never had any problems, and my last flight home. So we finally got home, it was around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then I went back to work because while I was through high school, I was able to work at Gorelick Farms in the chest over there. So when I came back, they gave me a job, and I started working wholesale for them, delivering milk in the schools in Boston. I didn't really like that too much because it was a lot of hard work, and if you know anything about schools in Boston, they're not that great. And I didn't have the best, I had Rosendale High, Hyde Park High, so those were not very good schools to work with. So I did that for about 6 months, and then I got a job at Quonset Naval Air Station in a Naval Air Rework facility. I already had a security clearance, so it was easy to get a job. Worked there for 3 years, and then they were going to close the base down, so then I had to get out of there. So I did. I got another job. Worked intermediately at Janelle Body Works. Worked at AT Cross for 10 years. Worked for a contractor for 7, and worked for Johnson & Wales University for 23 years as a master electrician. So I have had a good life.
Are you a member of any veterans organizations?
I belong to the American Legion since 1968. I don't participate because, see, the Vietnam veterans never really talked much about the war because it was not very well accepted around here. You guys are too young to understand that right now, but other people would know. Your mother would know. I mean, we used to have to travel with our uniforms on, and people would spit at us, and you know, so we never had a good reception. Even when the war was over, we never had a good reception. So you guys are probably the first people that I've ever talked to that I talked about this, because I never talked about my service before, never. I enjoyed my time, and I think it's something we should do, because I think every young man should do something for his country. And my time in the service as an instructor was very, very, very gratifying. I enjoyed it, but the people out here did not enjoy that. We were in the service, you know.
Indeed. How did your wartime experiences affect your life?
Well, like I said, it was just the resentment that we felt around the house whenever we came around here and this and that. That was the only thing that affected me. So we just didn't talk about it, and we just kept going on. We never told anybody.
Were there any life lessons that you've learned from your service?
Well, life lessons in the service were all started when I went to Mount St. Charles Academy, because in those days the brothers used to be very rough. It's not like it is today. If you were bad, you got the ruler, you got a good slap in the back of the head, and if you told your parents, you got another slap. So discipline was not a problem when I went in the Air Force, because I was used to that kind of stuff. So it was a good experience. Yes, it was a lot of hard work, but you know, you got to remember, a lot of people were joining the Air Force at that time just to evade the draft. Because I was at Lackland Air Force Base, the second week I was there when I got my draft notice to go into the Army. And my father was in the Army, and I did not want to go in the Army. Because he got out because of ulcers, because of the food that was in the Army. So I says, I don't want to take part of that kind of stuff. So I made sure that I was able to enlist in the Air Force and passed all my tests so that I could go into there. The basic training is easier. The qualification at the range is easier. You always sleep in a nice place at night. You always had decent barracks. We didn't have air-conditioned barracks like they have today. But, you know, it was good. It was good. It was good because you have to remember, the Air Force only became the Air Force in 1947. Here I am in 1964, so we're not talking many years. So a lot of the things that they still had, the barracks, like the barracks I had were World War II barracks. And when I was in Illinois, I laid down on my bed and I could look outside. So they were not the best barracks in the world. And the heat was not the best thing in the world. I went back, about 15 years ago, to Chanute Air Force Base, because we were in Illinois visiting a friend of ours. And man alive, all the wooden barracks were down, had nice concrete barracks. They had 2 to a room. Everybody was open bays. I mean, you know, you slept in open bays. So if you were 10 guys in your flight, 10 guys here, 10 guys upstairs, 10 guys on the other, so you were 40 people altogether in your flight. And you all slept in open bays. There wasn't single rooms. Today, the basic training today, I was just down there because of my grandson Christopher. They have air-conditioned barracks. They don't even have to march to go down to eat because their eating facilities are right in the same area as they are. The barracks are built up on stilts. You have 2 flights here, 2 flights, 2 flights, 2 flights. So there's 8 flights. They have their own kitchen down there. When they exercise, they're in the shade. They're not in the sun like we were. I mean, things have changed an awful lot. The Air Force was very young when I went in because it had just separated from the Army. Today, it's a much, much better Air Force than what they ever had. So, he's lucky.
What message would you like to leave for future generations who will view or hear this interview?
I think if you decide that you can't go to college, I would say the best thing to do is to go into the service, military service, and get yourself a profession. You can be an electrician, they have civil engineering, you can get plumbers, you can become firefighters. My grandson Christopher is going to be a firefighter. All the courses are there and everything else. You can go to school, you can earn up to 40 college credits while you're in the service. So why not take advantage of it while you're there? You're getting paid, you're going to school, you're learning a new trade. Why not? You know, in the Army, what do? March, learn how to shoot guns and that kind of stuff, you know. So I think the Air Force is one of your better things if you want to advance. The Navy is good, but every time that you go to another school in the Navy, you got to sign the dotted line again to extend your service, So these guys like are in submarine service, well, they sign up for the Navy, but if you want to go for a nuclear submarine, you got to sign the line for 2 more years. Then if you want to learn another skill, another 2 years. So in other words, they sign 4 years when they first come in. Next thing you know, it's 10, 12 years down the road. You know, by the Air Force, they don't make you do that. You sign the line, they'll train you to what you're doing, and if you're good at it, go at it. You know, there's no problem. They don't make you do that unless you want to cross-train. Then you gotta sign a dotted line again.
All right, so we're approaching the end of the interview. Is there anything else you would like to add to this? Anything else you would like to say?
No, it's a pleasure to be able to tell you guys about something that I've done. Not many people have known that I was an instructor in the Air Force. It was a very nice pleasure to have been able to give you guys an eclipse of what some of us have done, because there's really nobody around here that's ever known what I've done while I was in the service. As far as being an instructor, that was the thrill of my life. I had people going through there that were college degree people, but they were trying to avoid the draft, so they were giving me a hard time while I was teaching class. But you see, when you're in the service, you have firm control of all the students that you have there. So, if they would give me a hard time in class, I would sign a slip for remedial instruction. So they would march to the dining hall, eat, then all those from remedial instruction would get into another flight and march back to school for another hour and a half. So, if you wanted to fool around in my class, you paid for it. If you didn't, you did that. Another thing I used to do in class is sometimes, you know, the material is kind of dry because it's electronics, so it's kind of dry. So what I used to keep on my desk was this big capacitor. Oh, it must have been 8 or 10 inches long, 4 inches wide, and about 10 inches high. And before class, I would charge it up. So when I'm seeing that everybody is dozing off and doing that, I used to take a piece of wire and it would go, "Bow!" and everybody would jump up. Nobody fell asleep after that. It was fun. I had a good time. A lot of the kids came back and thanked me for what I had done for them in the service. So it was nice. I enjoyed it. The time at Travis Air Force Base was good. It was different. It was a military airlift command, so and there was a SAC base there, had B-52s on board. But we used the B-52 as a training experience, see? So I'll tell you a little bit about the B-52 because you probably have never heard of what I'm going to tell you right now. B-52s at the time were the B-52D models, which are the ones that they used in Vietnam for all the carpet bombing. All B-52s are equipped with 8 engines, and the engines on there, at that time, were not really strong enough for them to take off. So when they took off with a bomb load, they would only take off with a fuel load half the capacity because it was too much weight for them to take off with it. So every time a B-52 took off, a KC-135 would take off. All it was a Boeing 707 that was equipped with these big bladders full of jet fuel. Now once they got up to like 30 or 40,000, probably 50,000 feet, they would rendezvous, refuel the B-52, and then the B-52 would take off. B-52 had enough power on it, electricity-wise, that it could power a city of 40,000 people. It had 4 60 kVA generators on board, and that's the stuff that we repaired in the electrical shop. We made sure that they ran. We also had a battery shop out there. And the battery shop, what we did is, they were all cells, individual cells. And every time that a B-52 came off of alert, which there was always 6 B-52s on alert all the time. When they came off alert, they were towed off to the side and would put 6 more there. All the armament batteries would have to come off. So they would bring them all to the shop, we have to take them all apart. We put jumpers to get the voltage you needed for the atomic bomb or for whatever bombs they carried at the time. And we had to take them all apart and recharge them all and put them back on the shelf ready to go for the next round of affairs. So it was very interesting things to understand and learn. Also, while I was at Travis, while we had the C-123s, we were what they call depot maintenance. And what a depot maintenance is that we overhauled the engines on there. And those engines on the C-123 were propeller planes, and oil used to get all over the wiring harness. So what the civilians that were working there with us had made up a board so that we could set up wiring harness for the engines so that all the wires were correctly, and then we wired all what they call the connectors are known as cannon connectors. So we soldered all the wires in them. So when we were done, we would wrap them up, put them in a plastic bag, and put them on the shelf. So when they redid an engine and they needed one, they come over here and got this, and they didn't have to build one out there. It was already built ahead of time. So it was nice. One great experience I had at Travis Air Force Base is one day we had a thunderstorm out there. Those people don't see thunderstorms out in California. It was so funny to see everybody, all the civilians, run out to the door and see the lightning out there. I said, well, I've seen too many lightning storms in my life, I don't need to see any more, you know. But those are some of the things that you remember, you know. So that and all the bus driving that I did for the chaplain's office. The chaplain that was over there was a chaplain that came out of Connecticut. He was a Franciscan monk that was the chaplain over there. Father Hazinski. He was so nice. We got along real good together. So, you know, that helped pass the time away because we had a hospital. We had the 3rd biggest hospital in the Air Force system at the time. And whenever guys that came back from Vietnam and were on drugs and this and that, they had padded cells in there. And that's where they used to keep them. So it was kind of depressing if you went up there to see that kind of stuff, you know what I mean? So between that and all the dead bodies, it was kind of sad sometimes, you know. But you try to do other things so to change your mind around, you know. Because we were, like I said, we were a very busy base. Very busy base. And the C-141 was so brand new at the time that we had like 36 planes. Out of 36 planes, there was only like 22 or 23 that were flying because they couldn't get us parts enough fast enough to fix the planes. So we were cannibalizing off the other planes to make the other ones flying. And whenever 0001 and 0002 came on base, we jumped on it right away because what they wanted to do was get as many flying hours they could on those 2 planes to see what the wear and tear on a plane would be. Now, today's day and age, the C-141 is completely retired because it wasn't a real excellent plane like the B-52, which was made by Boeing. Today's Boeing B-52, all you got is the G's and H's left, but they're still a very large deterrent, because they carry a one whopping load of bombs, and it's something else, but it's a totally different plane. All the avionics are different, all the stuff. I can't tell you everything that the B-52 can do, because I can get myself in trouble. But I mean, there's a lot of things that goes on in a B-52 so that they can, you know, avoid detection and that kind of stuff. There's stuff that they can throw out. There's what they call a quail, but that's all I can tell you. I can't tell you no more than that, even after all this time, because it's still flying today, so you gotta be very careful. Other than that, it was great. I enjoyed it. I'd do it again.
All right, thank you for coming.
No problem.
Yeah, thank you for your service.
Okay, thank you very much. It was nice. I brought a couple of pictures if you guys want to see some stuff. See, that was my name tag I had in the service. This was the missilette that we were issued, right there. There's San Francisco at night. There's the Fisherman's Wharf. This was a Japanese garden that was around there.
Wow.
These are all, they're old postcards, you can see. There's the Oakland Bay, the San Francisco, the Bay Bridge. This one is not important. There's a fighter plane. Here's a KC-135. This is outside of Travis Air Force Base. This is the cable car. They're still running today. Here's the C-141 next to the Golden Gate Bridge.
Wow.
Here's the mighty B-52. Here's the KC-135 in flight. And here's a very rare picture of a C-133. And here's a B-52 taking off. Pollution, pollution, pollution. There's a C-141 on the ground. See the back gates open up?
Yeah.
Here's a C-130. Here's the entrance to Travis Air Force Base. And this is San Francisco. There's the cable car coming up from Fisherman's Wharf. Unbelievable.
Yes.
Those are all souvenirs that matter of fact, I just looked at them today because I hadn't looked at them in a long, long time. It's all nice souvenirs that I picked up. These are all of the ribbons that I wore when I was in the service. They're both the same. See right there. And then, there's the presidential citation. There's the unit citation with a cluster on it. That's the Air Defense Medal. I know that. That's Good Conduct Medal. I don't remember what the other one is. I have duplicates because it's on different uniforms that we had at the time, you know?
Yeah.
And then, see, they didn't take that many pictures when I was out there but this is one of the few pictures that I had. See, that's my class graduating from Miscellaneous Mechanic School. The plane in the background you probably have never seen in your life. It's a B-58 Hustler. And that was a static display, because at Chanute Air Force Base, they had all kinds of static displays. They had B-52, they had 3 B-52s, a B-36H, and this is when I graduated Miscellaneous Mechanics. See, there's the Hound Dog missile in the back. I never really graduated from there, but I went right to the end. That was almost 52 weeks for Pete's sake.
Wow.
And see my friends, they sign all on the side. See, today, you should see the nice pictures that Christopher has. I mean, now they take pictures of everything, his flight. I have nothing from Lackland Air Force Base, nothing. Don't even know anything about it or anything. The only thing I have is a list of all the guys that was in my flight when I was at Lackland. Other than that, I have nothing from Lackland. Everything else comes from Chanute. I have all kinds of stuff from Chanute, everything else from Chanute. And, everything over there that I had. Let's see if I can find. Here's a certificate of training, defensive driving course that we had to take when I was in the service. And then here is my expert marksman.
Oh, wow.
And honorable discharge certificate. Here's another certificate of training. And there's another one. So, you know, there's a lot of different things. There's another course I took through the Air Force. Got a graduation out of that one. So, I ended up in E4, which in 4 years in the Air Force, at the time I was in, that was very good, because very seldom you made E4. My cousin was 23 years in the Air Force and he graduated as an E5, so, you know, I think I did pretty good in 4 years. Yeah. So that's what I have.